Well, hello, good evening and welcome. Did you know that council tax is an unlawful tax because acts are not law?
Welcome back to the channel. So out of the 1,000 or so of you that have voted so far, 35% of you have said, sure, let's do some reaction videos to common law and freeman of the land type nonsense videos. The other 65% of you said, oh hell yeah, let's do those reaction videos. So this is that video with some of those reactions. So without further ado, let's move to some of those. I have taken a very quick look on TikTok for some of these council tax / common law argumentative type videos for some of my reactions. Now, you might have seen from the introduction that I've just picked something at random. I haven't even watched it yet. But let's take a look at these and we'll see where we go.
Well, hello, good evening and welcome to the How to Not Pay for Council Tax news, ladies and gentlemen.
Even before we go any further, I'm not entirely sure that, I know I don't always wear a shirt and tie on this channel, but I'm not entirely sure that I would trust somebody in this sort of clothing with legal advice, especially when it's telling you not to pay your council tax. But I'll reserve judgment and we'll see where we go.
Did you know that council tax is an unlawful tax? And
okay, let's pause straight away. It's not an unlawful tax because it is set out fairly clearly in the Local Government Finance Act, and it also stipulates who is liable to pay that tax. But again, let's see where we go.
There's no law. The 1992 Government Finance Act does not mean that you have to pay for council tax because...
Actually, it does. It specifies quite clearly that you're supposed to pay the council tax, and the liability to pay the council tax is decided by the local authority, and who is liable to pay that tax is detailed fairly concisely, fairly clearly within that act that this chap refers to. So I'm not sure where the confusion comes from, but again, let's watch on, benefit of the doubt.
Acts are not law.
Okay, well, if we back up just a second, this is the real stickler that keeps coming back to haunt on this channel. This little bit here.
Are not law.
Back slightly further.
Because acts are not law.
Right, acts are not law. This is another one of the common misconceptions that plagues the internet and circulates both YouTube, TikTok, and wherever else. This notion that acts are not law. I'm not sure what certain people think they are if they're not law, because they are law. It's primary legislation enacted by the Westminster Parliament as the supreme lawmaking body of this country. So I'm not sure what they think acts of Parliament are if they're not law, but they most certainly are law. But let's leave that point here for now and continue watching.
If you are struggling to pay your council tax in the UK, what you got to do, so if you are not paying it, then and you get a court summons or a liability order, then you write to your local county court and ask them for a evidence. You write to them and say, dear sir, madam, please can you tell me if I have a liability order, any court summonses or bailiff's letters or fines against my name?
Well, at this stage, if you've received the liability order and you've gone to court, well, if you've gone to court, working backwards, if you're going to court, you've already received the liability order, and it's not for the court to issue you these copies of documents, although you probably can request these copies of documents from the court, but you will have already received these documents. You don't just go to court out of the blue. You will have had all of these documents beforehand. And working back even further in this statement just now, if you are struggling to pay your council tax, you need to proactively and preemptively get in touch with your local authority to say you're struggling to pay. Can you come to some arrangement to pay over time? Each local authority can deal with that on their own merits and make their own decisions. But if you're going to court, it's because you haven't paid it. And typically there's going to be a liability order in the first place. But let's continue.
Then they will write back to you and say no, that you haven't. Write to your local county court, and then to get confirmation in writing of that, I've got a letter here that says we've been unable to trace any judgments against you in your local county court.
Okay, this goes on for some minutes. Initially, I wouldn't have even watched this video, but let's move to another one. Let's see what else we have here.
Did you know the council tax is unlawful? Are you sick and tired of your bills going up and feeling like a financial slave? Because slavery is illegal, it's unlawful. And
Whoa. Council tax is absolutely nothing to do with slavery. I'm lost for words, which is rare for me, but let's continue watching.
It's immoral, and no one can be forced into a contract against their will.
Okay, pausing again there. Council tax is not a contract. This is something that a lot of people get confused with. You do not have a contract with your local authority. Your liability for council tax is set out in legislation. It isn't by way of a contract. You don't need to sign anything. It's not something that they send you out and you need to read it and sign and agree to terms of a contract and all this sort of stuff. It's set out in legislation. Unless you are exempt for one of a number of reasons, or you get a discount for one of a number of reasons decided by the local authority, then you're liable to council tax. It's not a contract, it's not unlawful, and it's nothing to do with slavery.
Meaning you cannot be forced to pay for something you just didn't agree to.
Well, again, it doesn't matter whether you agree to it or not. If you're liable to pay it, you're liable to pay it. It's not up for debate.
And the truth is, no one can create an obligation for another person.
Again, that's not true, because obligations are created within legislation, and there are various obligations created all the time. When you have, let's say, a right to something, you've usually got a duty that goes along with that right. You might have a right to one thing, but then you've got a duty to something else. And there are obligations that arise out of legislation. For example, the video I did earlier today, you have a duty to take reasonable steps to ensure that a trespasser is not injured on your property. This arises out of legislation and you need to comply with it. Doesn't matter if you agree to it or not. If you don't comply with it, then you are held liable for breach of that law.
And if that were true, it would be an act of force and therefore be unlawful. So did you...
So being required to pay something is an act of force, therefore unlawful. The argument is unfounded because it's not an act of force. An act of force would be me going along and using force against somebody, or somebody using any kind of force against someone else or their property or something else. It's nothing to do with an obligation arising out of legislation to pay council tax. But let's listen on.
No, the council tax is unlawful. It is their legal obligation of the council to prove that you're obligated to pay it.
Yes, they do that under the Local Government Finance Act, Section 6, from memory.
Now is the time to make a stand and challenge the council's claim. We are not refusing to pay, which would be dishonourable.
Okay, so why aren't you paying?
But we're merely asking them to prove our obligation to pay it.
Yes, it's in the Local Government Finance Act. The obligation is there. If you're in any doubt, go and read it. And if you're still in doubt, pay a lawyer to explain it to you. But it's there in black and white.
Until they do, we must withhold all our payments.
If you withhold your payment of council tax when it's due, it's one of the quickest routes to bankruptcy. I speak from our clients' experience. If you withhold council tax, they go almost immediately for a liability order, and if you still refuse to pay that, and there's no other way of paying it, the ultimate route is to bankruptcy. Let's move to another video.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't be voting on anything to do with the council tax.
I've seen this video floating around. This chap appears to be in some sort of council meeting. Councillor Chris, Modern District. So he's at a council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't be voting on anything to do with the council tax. I'd just like to state that council tax is unlawful, and under the Local Government Finance Act of 1992, no mandatory obligation to make payment towards council. There is no...
Well, again, it is there within the Act. There is an obligation to pay. There is a liability to pay the council tax under the same Act. Let's move to another video.
Do you know what's really the fact of how many people's nerves it touched because I don't pay my council tax.
Yes, it touches people's nerves when you don't pay council tax, because other people do pay council tax, and the local authorities have to account for the people that don't pay council tax when accounting for the overall costs of what they need to spend. And so when certain people don't pay their council tax, it invariably will directly have an effect upon what other people pay for their council tax, because it's a bit like a shop accounting for loss due to theft. The overall pricing goes up because of some people that steal goods. Just like in insurance cases, a disproportionate amount of people will cause the overall premiums to go up because they drive badly. Just by example, by extension, the Motor Insurance Bureau picks up the bill, which is funded by all of the other insurance companies, picks up the bill for those people that are not insured to drive. So when you are hit by an uninsured driver and your insurance company wants to pick up the funds from them and they are not insured, it ultimately goes to the Motor Insurance Bureau, which is funded by everybody else. That is why people get upset about not paying your council tax.
People are literally saying they've unfollowed me because I don't pay my council tax. And people saying, well, if you didn't get your face filled, your hair done and blah, 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 then you'd be able to pay council tax.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. Because if you, self-admittedly here, getting hair done, tattoos done, etc., etc., those are not priorities for living. So council tax is a priority because it's a statutory obligation and everybody needs to pay it. And, well, like it or not, until it goes away, it's something that has to be paid because that is what funds all of the local services. Let's skip forward and see if there's anything else.
Blah, blah, blah. And have people sat behind a screen thinking, how does she afford to get her hair done? How does she afford all this and that and to pay her bills and that?
Yeah, well, if you're not paying your council tax, then yeah, you've got a chunk of money that you're not spending on your council tax that you can spend on these other things. Presumably that's what they're referring to.
Blah, blah, blah. Instead, I've been open and I've been honest and I've said, yeah, I'm in debt, I've had to pay this. I've actually had to get my hair on tick because I've been in debt with council tax. And that's...
So you're not paying your council tax because you're borrowing money to get your hair done. So there you have it. Some of the TikTok videos explaining why you're not supposed to pay your council tax, why they don't pay their council tax, why they believe it's unlawful, all of which are wrong, of course. And if you remain in any doubt, you can look it up in the Local Government Finance Act, Section 6, which provides the person's liable to pay council tax. It's all set out there, very clear, and those are the people liable to pay council tax. So please don't believe these videos when you see these online. Do check the legislation yourself or get a lawyer to explain it for you. In the meantime, please do hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.